Everyone I know who's autistic who went to college has experienced some form of discrimination, bullying, despair, feelings of hopelessness because they don't know what to do and there aren't enough supports for them to be able to be successful. High school was very hard for me because I got bullied a lot and I didn't know how to make friends. The person you see now is not the person who is going to high school and getting bullied every day. I learned a lot of social skills since then. When I was a teenager, I went online to try to find other people like myself. Oddly enough, there weren't really any central locations for people on the spectrum. In fact, it was really difficult to find other people like myself. I finally found a website and I met this other guy named Dan, and we were talking about how much that site sucked. And one of us was like, "Oh, we could do such a better site." And then the other one was like, "Well, why don't we?" And we were like, "All right, let's do it." And we created a site. Within a couple months it was up and running, and within a few days we had a few hundred people sign up. It instantly became very popular because it was something that was needed and we were filling that niche. And it was somewhat in a way I created it from a somewhat selfish place because I wanted to find others for I wanted to have that for me, but there were other people that also wanted that, so it ended up helping everyone out. My site Wrong Planet has been a very powerful force for a lot of people and has been incredibly transformative to their lives because a lot of people went through their entire lives, some of them in their 50s or 60s or 70s even, a lot of younger people on the site, but a lot of people went through their entire lives not being able to connect, not even knowing why they were different. And now knowing about autism and going online, finding a place like Wrong Planet where they finally can be like, I'm not alone. I can't believe that it's taken me, 50 years or even 30 years or 20 years to find a place like this. I used the fact that I started the website as part of my college essay when I was applying for colleges. And oddly enough, I was not really doing well in school before the website and before my senior year. And it really turned everything around when I started the website. My parents were sort of thinking that I might not even graduate from high school, much less go to college. And then I kind of applied it almost as this afterthought at the very last minute to colleges. And I called up the college I wanted to go to when I hadn't heard back from them. And I was like, hey, why haven't I gotten a letter? Don't you send one either way? And they're like, oh, well, you didn't apply for this semester. I'm like, there's multiple semesters? They're like, yeah, you need to apply for the fall semester, not the spring semester. And I was like, oh, okay, can you switch it over? And they're like, okay, we got to go decide if you're going to get in. We have a meeting. Well, I'll call you back in 15 minutes. And they called me back and like, you're in. So I went to George Mason University where I majored in film. I originally was majoring in computer science, but realized that I wanted to do film. My university was about 2.5 hours away from my hometown, which is the perfect distance because it's too far for pop in, but close enough that if you get in trouble, your parents can come. But anyway, my dad drove me to the dorm, helped me unpack, and once everything was done, he's like, all right, cool, see ya. And that was the start of my adult life. It's interesting because a lot of times I find that people on the spectrum have very protective parents, and they're these adults that might be in their 30s or even 40s, and their mother still goes with them everywhere and helps them out. And if obviously if they had just been let go, they probably would have had more chance to be independent. Some people might prefer a small school, but I personally feel that having that large student body allowed me to grow and meet a lot of people and have more likelihood of finding people that understand me. I think for someone who has issues with social skills, having a small college could be worse because going to a small school might result in you having a very close student body and then having one weird social situation that people talk about to everyone, and then you get this reputation as the weirdo. And that's not right, but that's just how it is. I had never been living away from my parents, so obviously living with my grandparents, but I had never been living independently on my own, so it was a big shock. And At first, I had a lot of issues that I dealt with. Well, one of the things that was very important was that I needed to have a room of my own at college. So I made sure that I had my own single dorm room. We specifically requested a single room accommodation through the disability office at our university. The first few days, I was just talking to people. I was learning a lot. I watched other people and how they interacted, and I tried to make friends. It was really scary, and I didn't know what to say. And, I screwed up a lot of, I think, probably social interactions. But the first few days was acclimating and walking around campus, getting comfortable with the meal plan situation, figuring out how to make my room quiet because I was on. Every college has a party floor in their dorms, and I somehow ended up on that. I tried to interact with people in the first few weeks of college, and it was something where I would watch how other people were interacting and then try to mimic those interactions. And I failed a lot. I just came off as weird. I didn't know how to ask people to hang out. Uh, didn't know. I didn't know the intricacies of small talk. Although now that I say intricacies, I kind of laugh because it's not. It's pretty simple. I think for a lot of people, the first thing that's really hard for them is making friends. And once they learn that, they quickly realize that's not all there is. You've got to keep them. So keeping friends is a big issue that a lot of people on Wrong Planet talk about, especially those who are older and have figured out how to make them, but might not necessarily know how to keep them. When I got to college, I really wanted to do computer science. So I declared my major as computer science. I did a lot of computer science courses up to the 300 levels. And I took the courses that I needed to for that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of math requirements. I don't like math. That was one of my least favorite subjects in school. And also, eventually I did internships. I worked at AOL. I did a lot of different things. What I found was that I really enjoyed films. And I've always been passionate about film and television. I've loved it. I've been excited by the idea of making it. I've been excited by the idea of watching great things. So I eventually realized I really wanted to switch my major to film. And I did that halfway through. A lot of teachers were understanding of autism, and I would make a habit of trying to explain it to my professors if I thought it was necessary. Some teachers, unfortunately, were not very understanding, and the Disability Services Office actually sometimes made it more difficult. At first, it was great, but they hired a new director of the Disability Services Office, and then I had to start filling out forms to take tests, and it's like I'm bad with executive functioning, so that's just making it worse. So I would end up not using the extended time, or I would just talk to the teachers directly and say, listen, the Disability Service Office has a lot of red tape, and can we just do this between us? And they're like, yeah, I hate working with them. Like, yeah, that's better. But other teachers, I had to retake a class because there was one teacher that wasn't understanding. It's funny because in high school, all the teachers were like, you're not going to be able to get away with this in college. When in fact, I was able to get away with much more in terms of turning in assignments late. They're like, this is the real world doesn't give you, extended time. Like, yeah, it does. You have plenty of time. You might have to pay a late fee, but those are nominal. I did have some professors that were not cool with it and said really, I had some professors that said some things that really bothered me. Like, well, it's not fair to anyone else. And I'm like, well, yeah, it is. If they're autistic, then yeah, give them that accommodation too. If they were saying it's not fair for the non-autistic students who don't have this. And I'm like, but they're not autistic. They don't need that. And that was something that you still see today. And it's something that needs to change. And it's a problem in college. It's more of a problem, I think, back then, but it's also a problem in high school and in the job and the workforce. And unfortunately, it's something that's going to take a long time to change. My overall experience in college was positive. I really love being in college. I miss it. And it was incredibly big growth opportunity for me. And I think that living on campus was a big part of that. I think that a lot of times parents want to bring their kid to community college, and they don't realize that that might make them miss out on part of the experience. It's common in universities to have a disability office that's run with someone with a focus on physical disabilities, and they don't understand or even try to understand something like autism, which is so different from being in a wheelchair. There are a lot of similarities, but it's a totally different thing. It's harder to conceptualize that someone has trouble with executive functioning than someone is in a wheelchair and can't go upstairs. It's very obvious. A child can understand that. I think people are, and it's just human nature. If you see someone in a wheelchair, you're going to be more likely to open the door for them. But if you see someone who's autistic, you don't know they're autistic. Why would you be trying to accommodate them? Even if they tell you that they have this accommodation, you might be like, well, it doesn't look like anything's wrong with you. When you have a disability like autism where you need certain things and people don't know you need them, and then you have to explain them, that takes a lot of effort, and that in of itself could be difficult for someone with a communication disorder. So just that very fact that you are misunderstood and then have trouble articulating what you need causes a lot of friction and can cause a lot of problems. And that's, I think, a lot of the reason that there's so many troubles with autistic people with employment and things of that nature. I think the best advice in college is to try to do everything you can to experiment and see what works for you. Every situation is different, but if you fail enough, you'll find out what works and what doesn't. A lot of people are afraid to fail, and that's something that I continually hear. Oh, well, I asked someone out and she said no. Clearly I'm a failure. And I'm like, well, how many people have you asked out? And they're like, her. But she was the one. And what they don't realize is that you need to ask out a lot of people before one will say yes. Well, at least I do. I don't know if... I like to say that the biggest part of college, the most important part for me, was not the academics, but the turning me into an independent adult.